this all ties in with this driving question about why focus on the national level when so much of the important work that we all do, you guys do more than I do at this point, on the ground, and programmatic types of efforts are at the local level. I hope to provide more context on why it is important moving forward. That's my goal here in this conversation. Just real quickly, what I'll be talking about, I'm going to give some background on NMSA. I'm not going to dwell on that. I just want to make sure that, for those who don't know that much about us, that you understand where I'm coming from, what the background is, and where we're going and whatnot, what we're involved with now. I do want to provide some thoughts and share some thoughts about the state of things now and again in the near future. There's some national issues, especially in the legal front, that are really dynamic. We can talk about, and then like I said, performance. And I want to talk about our testing program, which ties in with very closely with work that is being done in Washington. So real quickly on NMSA, again, for those who don't know about where we're coming from, who we are the only national organization that focuses entirely on the MS4 sector. That's kind of our what differentiates us. There's a lot of national organizations that touch on aspects of it, flooding, ASFPM, or the Water Environment Federation, which is a close partner of ours, focuses on the water quality side, and a lot of it's a wastewater and wet weather type of issues. ASCE, APWA, many others. But we're the only organization at the national level that focuses strictly on the MS4 programs. So that's the lane that we're in. We are a coalition of, we initially started out just as only state organizations. And as you heard that we've got half the country covered, and I'll show a map in a second. But we are also branching out into having MS4s join us directly. We have one of our first members from MS4, the MS4 communities to join us directly is actually Thurston County in Washington. So we appreciate that. But we hope to get many more of those. But the bottom line is we're a coalition, we're an organization of organizations. We have individuals that are representative of this organization. So just clarifying why we're called an alliance and not an association. Our motivation for formation is listed there. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the whole point is to raise the bar for stormwater. Be proactive, not reactive. Connect all the fragmented locations, climates, frankly, backgrounds. Stormwater is a different beast than other types of infrastructure, and that we've got such a broad ranging set of, we have people who are scientists or public outreach engagement folks to engineers and getting into policy and law and whatnot too. So we are not just one size fits all, but I think we need to be united and connected together. And the last thing is just to increase the value proposition of stormwater investments. But our vision is pretty simple, that we want to help provide clean water for the nation, just like many other organizations. Our action areas are listed here. Of course, we're a 501c3, so we need to focus on education, sector support, help MS4s and help them do what they need to do and what you guys do on a daily basis in a better way, more effective way, the most cost-effective way possible. But also we get into things like raising awareness of communication and awareness, and of course policy and advocacy, as you've heard. If you want to take a look at it and get some more information, ms4nmsa.org is our website. If you want to take a look at that in greater detail, should give you an understanding of what our coverage is. All the states in blue and Hawaii. I always forget to color in Hawaii. I apologize for anybody from Hawaii on the call. But we. All the states in blue have a state organization. Washington, of course, is the Washington Stormwater Center is our organization member in Washington, and Thurston County is that, and that gold star or that yellow star that's listed there. But we've got 26 states, over half of the urban population that are part of that network, and we're having more and more MS4s join us directly. We have private members or affiliate members, whatever you want to call that, both for our testing program as well as just for NMSA in general. So there's a QR code there. You can check that out if you can use that to learn more about it or just engage with us and learn about membership that way. So if you get the PDF of these slides, you can take a look at that and feel free to follow up or contact me. I just wanted to mention our leadership is from across the country. Again, we're not all in one region. As Lisa mentioned, we're in 9 of the 10 EPA regions, and Lori as a presence, not only on our board of directors, but also in our executive committee. So Washington State's leadership is represented nicely here in the work that Lori represents. So just want to give an understanding what we've been focused on, or what we're going to be focusing on. Sorry, I've got a bit of a delay here going on. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I clicked on a link and I shouldn't have. So we have our own stormwater awareness effort going on right now. And we refer to as National Stormwater Day. I'll talk about that at the very end. I'm not going to dwell on that right now. But it's just, in short, this is a celebration of all the stormwater awareness efforts across the country. There's, you guys have yours, which is awesome as a declaration. Wisconsin, I think, had the same thing. That's why they have Wisconsin Stormwater Awareness Week in August. But Ohio, California, some communities themselves, Omaha and others, Phoenix and whatever. So all of that information is at stormwater.day. If you go to that URL, you'll find information about this. And I think we included the Washington stuff too. We should have, and we've been scrambling to try to get the updated information on there. So if it's missing, I apologize. I'm trying to stay on top of it. We always have a webinar, free webinar, just to celebrate this. And it's this year, it's going to be on the November 15th, because November 16th is a Saturday. And I'm pretty gung-ho about stormwater, but I don't think a lot of people will be on a webinar on a Saturday. So we're doing it on Friday. And really why we chose this day is because it's the day that the MS4 phase 1 program was officially established. So that's what we're talking about. So these are the kind of things that we're trying to do to raise awareness. And other things that we do every year is, for 8 years now, I believe, the National Stormwater Policy Forum is something that we've done here in DC as part of Water Week in April. And we, all of these, at least the last 3 or 4 years, we've recorded and we put on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. You can get that from these slides, or you can ask me, or you can just search us up. You can watch all of those for free. That is a half-day event. Well, it used to be half day. Now it's a most day events from 10 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m. We just have Congress members and staff come in and talk about various topics. We've got interest groups from the environmental sector as well as from the municipal sector, and we have EPA come in and talk about national policy issues. So you can see we're talking about contaminants of emerging concern as an example on this slide. We teamed together with Water Environment Federation, the National League of Cities, National Association of Counties, and others, but they're really our main partners. And we also developed what's called an ASCE document, so that when you go to the Hill, you have a literal document that lists out what you're going to be asking for in federal legislation, and you can leave this behind. It's like a brochure, and you can see what we talked about in our 2024 issue, focusing on things like infrastructure funding. A lot of provisions in the Infrastructure Jobs Act that have not been supported by the appropriations, intense storms and resilience and source control, things like that. And again, you go to our YouTube page, you can see all of this information, all of these events. And we also have a bunch of other webinars that are available for free. A lot of these we did with EPA. And we also have a training platform that we're just starting, and we hope to work with other organizations and cities if they want to use this platform too. It's in development. We're going to be rolling it out in a bigger way in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. Wanted to mention Centers of Excellence for Stormwater Infrastructure Technologies, or Centers of Excellence, so how we've been referring to it. And these are research institutions that are being established, or research centers that are being established. 4 have been selected, and this is through grant funding provided by EPA. This is from federal. This was part of the IIJA actually, and one of the few aspects of the IIJA that actually got implemented and fully funded actually. And you can see what the Centers of Excellence are supposed to be focusing on is conducting research, of course, but doing things beyond that, technical assistance for various populations and groups, collaboration with other research institutions to share findings, and there's going to be national clearinghouse for all these research findings and outputs are going to be provided so that we can get that out to the world. These are the 4 that were selected. There were 30 proposals that were submitted, 4 that were selected. University of Oklahoma, the Nevada, basically the higher education system of Nevada, Center for Watershed Protection, which is a national organization, and then the University of New Hampshire. We teamed up with New Hampshire as well as the University of Minnesota and are part of that New Hampshire team. That is going to be moving forward starting in 2025. There's a chance that these grants might be frozen or even clawed back, but we're not sure about that as of yet. In terms of the new administration coming in, because I know that there's been a proclamation about freezing all grants, but since this is obligated moving forward, I think that this ship has sailed, but I'm not sure. We're not entirely sure. So we hope that that's the case. I will say that we are going to be focusing on stormwater testing and research, our STEP program, which I'll talk about. And we're also going to advocate for more of these, obviously this covers only a small portion of the country. For instance, University of Washington, in my view, or in Washington State and the Pacific Northwest in general should be represented with all the great research that's been done. That needs to be leveraged and enhanced and supported. And I believe that it will be in the future. But I'll just, California doesn't have one. Here in the Chesapeake Bay, we don't have, there's a lot of open spaces in terms of geography and climates that are not covered. So we feel like this is a good start. We hope to fill in the map in the future, and we're going to advocate for that as an organization. But I'll just note for folks to keep in mind, these centers of excellence were actually started in as marker bills. Those are small bills in the federal Congress, going back as far as I can remember to 2011 or 2010, I believe. And that's something that we supported when I was at WEF, and then NMSA supported since then too. So it takes a long time for things like this to become a reality. Now that these are a reality, making more of them, getting more funding, ongoing funding. We only have funding for 2 years, for instance, after this. Getting more funding, getting expanded funding is a lot easier than getting them established in the first place. So I sincerely hope and expect that the Pacific Northwest will benefit from one of these centers of excellence in the near future. It would be a crime if it didn't, frankly. I'm just moving along here. I want to talk a little bit about the state of the stormwater sector, and I'm just talking about like kind of the big picture. Where are we now? Where are we going? How are things going? And this is just, my view, trying to kick things off here from the national perspective. And the first I want to mention is actually from a book that was published in 2009, I believe, from the National Academies of Science, the National Research Council, which is a portion or section of the National Academies of Science, entitled Urban Stormwater Management in the United States. You guys can get online and download this yourselves if you want to for free. An PDF copy you can get for free. I think you have to pay for the hard copy. But if you haven't seen it, it's a really interesting read. It's very comprehensive. And in the introduction, it there's a lot of opining about big picture issues. So that's why I pulled some quotes from this document, and you can see them here, that there's a lot of, hand wringing, I'll say. And this is 2009. I don't think things have changed that much since this point in time. And, there's things like, that we're unlikely to control, the stormwater's contribution, the way that we're going about this now. And there's a lot of discussion about a lack of nationwide perspectives, a lack of national uniformity, standardization, when it comes to both, cost data, or what is success, what's performance, national design standards. So I think the big takeaway from something like this is this to say, if this is a temperature taking type of a document at this level, it's that there's a need for national leadership. And again, that's why we're trying to fill at least part of that need at the national level. We're also trying to support, again, higher recognition, more awareness for stormwater, working with other national organizations, in this case, ASCE, as well as some other organizations, WEF being another one, to encourage ASCE to include stormwater as a separate infrastructure in their really highly publicized and well-known infrastructure report card that comes out every 4 years at the beginning of every administration. not new administration, just every 4 years. And for the first time ever in 2021, stormwater was included. That was a huge thing, and hats off to WEF. Really, their survey data. They do surveys every 2 years. Needs assessments of the MS4s. That information was critical in getting this established. And they have ASCE has said they're going to be included again, and stormwater going to be included again in 2025. That's a big deal. It's really helpful because when we go to, when we go to advocate for more funding, more support, more recognition of needs in the stormwater sector, having something like this is something that resonates with Congress members and staff and whatnot, especially when you have a grade of D. That's about as bad as it gets, I believe. So clearly we have significant needs as identified by this report card. I mentioned the WEF, the Water Environment Federation Needs Assessment Survey. This has been done for 2018, 2022, and it's actually just opened recently. So that's something to keep on, be aware of. Washington always does a great job. I'm the one who works with WEF that looks at the data and crunches the numbers and whatnot. So I see that, and I know Washington is always one of the top states when it comes to responsiveness, which is greatly appreciated. These are some of the things that we see over, if you look at this comparative analysis, kind of looking longitudinally over at least 4 years. And I think doing this multiple times over a long period of time, you start to see trends on things that change, but also things that don't change. And then it helps you understand and prioritize as organizations what the needs are in the sector. But for the first time, aging infrastructure came to the top in 2022 because we're seeing the sector mature, right? Our infrastructure is starting to get to the end of its design life in many instances. So aging infrastructure is something that I'm thinking we're going to see more and more of as a top challenge. And as far as top needs, it's always funding and financing. But we're seeing even things like asset management. As our sector matures, we need to provide resources and information on things like asset management, innovative B&Ps and whatnot as well. So again, just a perspective of where things are, what the needs are at the national level, and thinking about, needs. We also have to do some soul searching sometimes. And in that context, one of the questions that was asked, at least for the last 2 cycles of these surveys, is, are the long-term needs of or the goals of the Clean Water Act, is that being met through the MS4, the federal MS4 program? And for the first time, 2022, the plurality, 41% said no, but less than a third said yes, and about the same amount said unsure too. So clearly, there's not a consensus that things are going the way that we think they should be going. And I think this lack of national data on performance and success and whatnot, I think we don't know. I think there's a lot of folks who don't know what to think, and there's evidence to show that we are doing some good, but we're not doing as much as we would like to be doing. But I think as this MS4 program matures federally and then across the country, I think there's this soon, if not now, we should have a conversation about what needs to change at the federal level. And again, having a national organization helps us have a seat at the table so that when major changes happen, we're not reactive and we're not trying to push back. We all want to address stormwater management and address stormwater pollution. So we're not there to say that we don't want regulations. I just think we want to have practical ways to move forward, and we need funding and support as well. And that's, of course, the number one limiting factor identified was funding and investment. 60% said this is why we're not making the progress that we would like to see or that we envision seeing. And that topic of funding is a big one. I'll get to that in a second. I did want to talk about some national issues that way. But in the meantime, I'll move forward with some legal and policy issues that are going on at the national landscape. And the first one I'll mention is there's been a lot going on at the Supreme Court. It's really amazing how boring the Supreme Court has been on these issues for for decades, frankly. And now over the last year, and it's changed significantly, and it will continue to change. And I'll share information on why what that's about. The first thing was the changing or the breaking down or the removal of the Chevron deference doctrine. And for those who don't know that, this is a process that was set up, a legal process that was set up in 1984. So this goes back 40 plus years, right? Or 40 years, I guess, exactly, something like that. That was basically a way to say when all of these questions about not just environmental regulations, but regulations writ large that come before a court, there's two questions to try to resolve this in a consistent way, and it's called the two-step process. Oh no, it's not a dance. I think sometimes it is done like a dance at the legal level, but anyway, the point is that it's the first is about this is really about legislative ambiguity. So is there legislation that is not clear, and then it's gone to an agency, a regulatory agency, and this ranges from food and drug to financial to environmental. It's very broad reaching. But the question is, did Congress speak clearly on the legal question at issue? So is there any ambiguity in the legislation that's driving this? And if not, did the regulatory agency's interpretation that's at question here, is it permissible? Is it reasonable? Is it overstepping or whatever? And if yes, then you basically defer to the agency, because the agency are the ones who oversee this. They've got the experts and whatnot. So this is the most cited Supreme Court decision of all time. Cited over 19,000 times since it was established. And for those, if you want to think about this politically, this was actually originally touted and supported by Justice Scalia, who was a conservative, and he supported this as a doctrine all the way till his passing in 2014. But now things have changed politically, and in June 2024, this Chevron deference has been overturned. The Loper-Bright case. We don't have time to get into this, but basically, the ruling is based upon a separation of powers. Congress should be the one speaking to agencies. Can only go so far in their interpretation. They have to say what is Congress's intention, and they have to defer to that. So that's really what this is about. And you might ask, well, what does it matter in our sector? Well, this comes up all the time, and this is just one example. And this is literally from my backyard. You can see a picture of a creek that's literally right about 300 feet away from me right now as I'm at my home office. This picture was taken by my son when I was as a kid, or when he was a kid. and this is a Virginia case, and this was Atkinson Creek was it's headwater streams here in the Chesapeake Bay watershed that's being blown out because of that's what headwater streams do in urban areas, unfortunately. And I'm sure you guys have all seen these urban streams that are incised and greatly impacted with roots hanging out and whatnot, and then flood plains disconnected from the creek itself and whatnot. So it was originally listed as an impairment for benthic health and sediment as the stressor. But EPA, the regional office here, is actually out of Philadelphia. EPA Region 3 took it over and said, nope, we're going to make this a flow-based team deal, because the flow is really the heart of the matter, right? That's what's really causing this stress. That's the stressor, right? And flow-based team deals have been used, not a whole lot, but they had been used up to this point at least. But Virginia DOT and the Fairfax County, where I live, sued EPA and said, hey, no, that's not fair. And they basically won based upon the Chevron doctrine. The first step was, is it ambiguous? Is the legislation ambiguous? And the court said, no. Clean Water Act lists pollutants. Flow is not a pollutant, so therefore you can't limit flow. So that was step one. So it was dead there. Step two, even if you had to go to step two, they said, no, there almost 4,000 sediment team deals and just a few flow-based team deals. This is unusual. You shouldn't be doing this. That's not reasonable. So the point is that it does matter in our sector, and there's a lot of questions about what will happen now. No one really knows. These doctrines are starting to fall like dominoes. There's a doctrine called the AUER doctrine, AUER doctrine. That's about regulatory ambiguity. That's a whole nother thing. But the thought is that courts are now going to take power back from regulatory agencies, both from questions of legislation as well as regulation. So the big picture things, we're seeing courts get more power overall. We're seeing limiting power at the executive branch level, as well as Congress to a certain degree as well, especially if the AUER doctrine domino falls. So what we're likely to see is, there's going to be chaos. There's in the short term. There's 800 federal courts. It could be 800 different rulings. They're all going to be all over the place, which is what they're trying to minimize in the and address in the kind of the standard way of addressing things as established by Chevron. So it's going to, things are going to be all over the place. I believe that's the consensus. I'm not a lawyer, but that's what we hear. And the appellate courts, which are, when you appeal, it goes to an appellate court to make rulings. We may see some consistent rulings. That might be how precedents are stick, more or less. I've got some other speculations that are up here that aren't mine. That are associated with the reference that's provided there, but we're likely to see forum shopping, which is already happening in other contexts where you go to a very favorable court for your, whether it's left or right leaning, to get a ruling. So that's going to create this landscape that's all over the place, most likely. But overall, I think we're likely to see just a chilling effect overall on regulatory rulemaking. But it's still speculative. This is so new. It's going to take, it was in place for 40 years. Who knows? We can't tell in 6 months how things are going to change. So why does this matter? Again, other rulings have impacted. So of course we've got the Maui versus the county of Maui, I think is what it is, versus Hawaii Wildlife Fund, which is basically if there's a discharge from a point source, and it doesn't go right into a waters of the U.S., but it goes into a water course that connects with a waters of the U.S. through groundwater. Means is that the same as, or the functional equivalent of a discharge? And it's going back, and this has gone back and forth, and there's guidance that has been released, actually multiple guidances, which is kind of confusing. This was back in 2021, but as recently as 2023, they provided information that basically said, for our sector, for the stormwater sector, if you have an infiltration stormwater practice and a discharge is delivered there, the intent of that stormwater discharge, or I'm sorry, the intent of that green infrastructure practice, let's say a bioretention facility, is it has a design and performance provision that protects anything that goes in there. Because the thought is, if that bioretention discharges certain pollutants, could that be seen as a discharge? That would be the liability of the owner or operator of that BMP, or that stormwater control measure. And the bottom line is that this guidance should address that and protect that. There's also the waters of the U.S., so we don't have time to go over this, but I think that's going to be the number one thing that is going to be addressed by this new administration. And we know that used to be about the significant nexus, now it's relatively permanent. So the reach of waters of the U.S. is being reduced. But for many states, and I believe this is true in Washington state, but I know in several other states at least, that the states can define their own waters of the state that go beyond the waters of the U.S. that can protect a lot of those waters. So what's next? I think the big thing to have on the horizon legally is that there is a case that was just, there's arguments that were just heard about 3.5 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, October 16th, at the Supreme Court, and it's the city and county of San Francisco versus EPA. I don't have the docket number in front of me; it's 23 dash something or another. But the question that's here, it's about combined sewer overflows and stormwater discharges that associated with their NPDES permit in San Francisco. The question is, can you use narrative language in a permit? Because San Francisco is saying, hey, if you can't tell us exactly what we're supposed to do in our permit, how do we know that we're ever going to meet that? This ambiguity kind of, puts us at risk. We don't know when we're ever going to be done addressing these discharges and whatnot. And so San Francisco challenged EPA, saying that's vague, it's generic, it's unenforceable, it's unimplementable. And so the question at hand, and this is a quote from the docket itself, is whether EPA can subject permit holders to the enforcement of water quality standards without identifying specific limits. So, we all know maximum extent practicable is by nature unclear, uncertain, it's not well defined. These, if you listen, and you can look online, you can just search for this case. You can listen to the audio of this, and you can hear. There's a lot of ways we can see this potentially impacting MEP. So this is something that we're tracking. The ruling will come out by June of next 2025, and it looks more like the city and county is going to win and EPA is going to lose. That's what the conventional wisdom is. And that may impact how general permits are developed and implemented. It's hard to say. So anyway, the point is that this matters. Again, one of the things that we track are these types of issues, and we try to at least inform folks about what's going on at that level. Again, at the national level, emerging contaminants are a big deal. 6-PPD and PFAS and trash. I wanted to highlight a couple things that we're doing there. And we're tracking for PFAS. I think most folks probably know what this is about, but these are these forever chemicals that are really good about providing fire retardants and other chemical protections in clothes. It's in furniture. There's a lot of benefits. Obviously, we wouldn't be using it. Wouldn't be used everywhere since the 50s, 60s, or whenever. I think it was around that time frame when it was starting to be used. And Washington State has as far as I understand, in the draft industrial permit, the first proposed monitoring requirement. And I believe this is still out and review. I think it's supposed to be 2025 before that's finalized. But you guys know more about that than I do. But now it's, EPA designated this family of toxins as a hazardous substance under CERCLA, under Superfund in April of this year. That means that municipalities are now open to third-party lawsuits. So what happens is if a company, one who produces a lot of PFAS, gets sued by an entity, they can start to reduce their burden, their liability burden, by bringing in as many parties into the lawsuit as possible, including municipalities and treatment works and other types of entities. EPA has said it's not their intention for this to happen, but they are powerless to stop that. So we and many other organizations at the national level are seeking what's called passive receiver protection through federal legislation, and that's something that we're part of a coalition that's asking for this, so that we can, as a transporter of PFAS, but not a generator of PFAS, we are not brought into third-party lawsuits, as an example. Something that's very important for us to try to do, because why should we be stuck with this bill? So this is a polluter pays type of approach. On trash and plastics, just the more that we hear, the more that we research, the more that we understand, there's just the impacts from plastics, microplastics is more and more significant. Tire tread wear is a big deal. Obviously, it's associated with 6-PPD, but the microplastics themselves, that's the greatest source of microplastics as one source. And a lot of it's, most of it's from the land, whether it's microplastics from tire tread wear or macroplastics or mesoplastics or mesotrash, mesoplastics that deteriorate, become micro and nanoplastics. And, this carries, it's a vector for disease and viruses, as well as just providing, obviously public health impacts in a general way. We worked with EPA and released a report in 2022 about the connection about aquatic trash and stormwater management, and we provided comments to the national strategy to prevent plastic pollution by EPA. We do see an increase in permit requirements for trash, which I think is a good thing. But we're studying this. We're trying to get in front of that. Even talk about things like, advocating for a national fund to help address that municipalities can use and pull from, that's paid into by those who produce plastics. And that's something that actually has been floated by, I think, Senator Merkley from Oregon, and we want to support that as well. Talked about tire wear and roadway particles, and obviously the huge loading on the microplastic side. Here's just some factoids. This is something that we're part of. We're looking at developing testing standards to have to try to understand how can we measure the effectiveness of addressing and filtering these particles out. It's a huge question. It's a huge issue, and of course, what's associated with tire tread wear. tire and roadway, I guess, the US, the Tire Manufacturers Association, I'm careful to say it's tire and roadway, it's mostly tire wear, I believe, is associated with the 6 PPD. And again, the Pacific Northwest has been the leader in researching the impacts of this, chemical additive, that it does prolong the life of and durability of tires. So there's fewer tires that blow out, it's more safe, and there's fewer tires that go to the dump, right? And they get thrown away and processed and whatnot, fewer scrap tires. But it comes at a cost when this chemical reacts with ozone. It becomes acutely toxic, as I think sure everybody in this group knows. There are alternatives being done, or analysis for alternatives being researched. This is going to be an ongoing process, but this is, again, something that we're trying to stay on top of. A lot of the country doesn't know about this. You guys do, and we're trying to share this information with others who may not know about it, and try to get more dollars for research in this area. On the funding side, I don't want to dwell on this too much because it's so obvious that there's, that we only have about 25 to 30% of all MS4s have any kind of dedicated funding program. Of course, Washington State, I think, has a disproportionately high number for this, which is great. Other states like Minnesota and Iowa and Wisconsin, and there's others that have a significant number too. But Washington State is really one of these leaders. And what I wanted to bring up is that we see, this is a graph showing the number of stormwater utilities being formed, and this is a cumulative. This gray part is the cumulative, and this only goes to 2020, but we're seeing a saturation that we're kind of flattening out. We're getting, and this is just a bar graph that's associated with this, that you see formation by year, and it peaks the mid 2000, to the mid aughts, and it's been declining since. So there's still many communities that do not have stormwater utility set up or dedicated funding source at the local level. And this is a problem. Sometimes the state legislative, statutory limitations. A lot of it's just political. But this is something that needs to change, and that's something that we're trying to address because, most funding for programs are at the local level. And while this is a slide from EPA, they'll talk about the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which is great. $172 billion over the lifetime of that fund has been created over the last 30 years. Less than 2%, about 1.8% of that has gone to stormwater. So while it's a big fund, very little has gone to, actually more goes to non-point than goes to stormwater. There's a new fund called the Sewer Overflow and Stormwater Reuse Municipal Grant Program. It's a new program. It's very small. We hope to grow that. Right now, it's so small that a third of states won't even apply for this money because it takes more money to administer this than the money that they're receiving. That's a problem. So that's something we're trying to change. Again, there's a lot of provisions that we had that we and other organizations were instrumental in getting included into the infrastructure, the IIJA, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law bill and law. But the only one that was supported with appropriations, not just authorized funds, were the $5 million for the Stormwater Centers of Excellence. So again, it's good to have a lot of this out here, but most of it was not enacted. Something that did happen this year, which is interesting, is that every well, it used to be every 2 years, and it was every 4 years, then it became 10 years. But periodically, the EPA does a survey of needs in the clean water space. So it's called the Clean Watershed Needs Survey. It was done in 2022 and released in 2024. And basically, this is a 20-year outlook of needs in the sector, was identified by states. And the takeaway in this is that we saw an increase of over 365% from the previous survey that was done 10 years. That was the only other data point that we had. So we went from $23.8 billion, which is about $1 billion a year for a 20-year, if you look at a 20-year time horizon, up to 115.3. So that's a huge increase. For Washington, I identified 2.2 billion, so it's about 282 per capita. So that's again over a 20-year lead, but that's an 8-fold increase compared to what was identified by Washington in 2012. So this is important because it indexes the needs for the sector in various funding programs. So that's really helpful, and EPA was great about working to identify this information, and we worked with them, and again we got a lot of support from a lot of states, including Washington, said to raise their hand and said, these are our needs. In the past, stormwater has been forgotten, more or less. And EPA was really good about helping to address that, which is great. To contrast that, again, I'm going back to the WEF MS4 Needs Assessment Survey. They identified a funding gap of about $7.4 billion annually. So that's an annual funding gap. And about a total budget of $20 to $30 billion that is spent on municipal budgets across the country. But if you look at the $7.4 billion as an annual, that's not that far from the $5.8 billion per year identified in the needs survey. So again, when you start to see the same data in different forms, you start to say, well, we must be in that ballpark. This must be somewhat real or accurate to a certain degree. I wanted to mention that EPA does have a new program called the Water TA program. If you go to waterta.org, you can get information. There's a lot of information about stormwater. We're trying to get it more. I'm sorry, epa.gov/waterta is the website. So if you go there, you can actually submit what your needs are, and you'll get some feedback. I don't know how quickly it happens, but there is a point person named Travis Ostrom right there. He's the new stormwater lead. He's only been there for about 9 months or so. And but he's the one heading this up, and he's somebody to engage with if you guys have some identified needs you want to get some support. A couple of the things I want to mention, and then I'll skip through some of this just to stay on time. I did want to mention that NMSA has a center of excellence of our own. Now, this is separate from the EPA Center of Excellence, but this is on community-based public-private partnerships. And I wanted to mention that here because we are currently working with some groups in Washington about this kind of unique program support that really is not just a traditional public-private partnership approach, but it's one that makes community support through local jobs, local workforce, local small business, and minority-owned business a priority in these, as well as trying to drive as much green infrastructure as possible in all areas. So we are, we're trying to promote this. We have a certificate program that is in development, it's not launched yet, so that those who want to work in this field, we're all on the same page. We work to support and review and develop RFIs, RFQs, RFPs for, they're based on the principles of the CBP program. I'll point out that this was the chair of our Center of Excellence is Dominique Lukanoff. She was at EPA for 25 years. And the CBP3 program was really, her approach, that was her brainchild. So she's a private practice now, or private industry now, but she's still supporting this. So last thing I want to mention is performance in stormwater. And the question is, how well do stormwater practices work? And there's the problem is that the problem statement is that there's no national organization that can answer that question well. Some states do, and Washington is one of those. To address this, NMSA is now leading the stormwater testing and evaluation for products and practices STEP program. Carla Malesi has probably mentioned something about this, or will. And we're working with TAPE, the TAPE program in Washington, to try to bring TAPE to a national level. What we're really trying to be is the consumer reports for stormwater. That's kind of a shorthand way of looking at it. We want to provide ways to provide credible information on performance so that communities and other consumers of stormwater infrastructure can make informed decisions. And a lot of what we've talked about, sorry, I'm jumping around so much. I've got a delay in my computer. Is really based on, so this is the National Center for Stormwater Testing, basically. It's called STEP. If you go to stormwatertesting.org, you can find out more about this. So this is the home of STEP. The STEP program is also going to be part of the Center of Excellence at EPA is launching too. So I know these are confusing things, but just trying to clarify. So what does STEP do? We promote the generation of testing standards. So establish testing standards for stormwater performance. We oversee testing, but we don't run the testing ourselves. We verify the testing was done properly as supposed to be done. And then we provide technical support about what does this verified data mean at the local level. What do we not do? We do not perform the testing, and we do not certify. We verify, and that's an important difference. And this process for verification is really consistent with what the TAPE program does. There's someone submits an application to get a technology Verified, we go through and review the application, review the quality assurance project plan. We have an external review group similar to the TAPE program that reviews these project plans, reports, handle the data, and then we provide a proof of verification that is sent back to the representative, and then they go out, try to get certification. And that process starts over again. Again, STEP is a verifier. We verify test performance in a standardized way. Certification is certified for use. We don't hold a permit, so therefore it's not our business to say whether it can be used or not. That's up to states, and that's up to MS4s and other authorities having jurisdiction. And then that's, TAPE is a certifier. We are a verifier. Just want to be clear about what we are and what we are not. Here are all the members, a lot of industry, but we also have, again, ecology, WEF. These are some public entities in Northern Kentucky, the Capital Region in Minnesota, St. Paul area, ASTM, Association of Clean Water Administrators, and then a number of other parties that are from the industry side. Just real quickly, just to wrap up, we are going through multiple phases. We hope to be done. We're in our phase 2 right now, transitioning, focusing on finalizing lab testing verification, but we're now transitioning into field testing, and we're working hard on that, and that is based significantly, if not solely, upon the TAPE program, and that's what we're focusing on right now. We do have a trash capture standard, testing standard that's finalized. That's been launched. We also have other types of devices and the lab-based testing context that will be ready any minute, literally the next couple of months. So we'll start doing verification. So the update here is that we do lab-based testing verification for trash capture technologies right now. We have a number of applications that are in and that we're processing right now. We're going to be expanding that in the near future. We have an external group of reviewers. We call them the SURGE, external review group. That is different than the BEER, the TAPE BEER, which is the Board of External Reviewers. Just want to be clear that they are different. And I also want to highlight that TAPE is still functioning and will continue to function for the foreseeable future. It's not going to, things aren't going to change tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of communication about where things are in the future. But again, we're focusing on field-based testing right now. Just to wrap up, I did want to mention National Stormwater Day. Here's the link to registration. Please register for this event that's on this Friday from 10 to 11:30 Pacific time. Here's information. I'm not going to go through all of it, but we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff that I've already talked about in this presentation. But we'll hear from EPA. We'll hear from somebody from one of the centers of excellence. We'll hear from ASCE, and then somebody who's here in the Virginia area who's got an award for how good their program is. So lastly, just to wrap things up for all in all here, is I want to answer the question, why join NMSA? Why be active at the national level? Because I think that's really what this comes down to. And I would say, first of all, we already have a member from Washington State. So talk to Larry Schaffner. He's a great leader in stormwater. We appreciate his involvement in leadership. But talk to him about NMSA. Since they've been a member for a couple of years now. But we also have just an ongoing relationship between our organization in Washington with a TAPE and STEP program partnership and development that's occurring, that we support the research, and we want to disseminate information about all the great research that's being led out of the Pacific Northwest as an example. So I think we already have a lot of synergy there. I also think that there's a need for support from national organizations. Like I said, it gives us a seat at the table. It allows me and others that I work with to have a seat at the table so that we can advocate for stormwater as something that should not be forgotten in a lot of conversations, which it has been, frankly, over the last couple of decades, frankly. And we can also track legal and policy issues as something to be aware of. So that's another reason. There are membership benefits. You can get discounts on conferences, products, services. There's a bunch of material that you can get access to as a member that you otherwise can't get access to. So there are tangible, specific benefits that way. You can keep up with current events with our newsletter and our webinars and just direct engagement with staff. And I guess the bottom line is that you can help to shape the stormwater sector, providing input on legislation, through comment letters, or regulations, at the national level. And it's such a new and still kind of forming sector that it's amazing how much input or how much we can shape the sector, even as a relatively small organization and new organization. As we gain more, more momentum, we're going to have even more impact. We'd love to have leaders from states like Washington to help us advocate in a more effective way. So if there's any questions, I know there's not much time. I covered a lot of ground here. You can email me and let me know, or you can consider joining. You can scan the QR code or go to that URL right there and look into becoming a member. So